We are live.
Good afternoon. Well, good morning. My name is Shanika Smith. I'm chair of the Equity and Engagement Committee. I would like to welcome you all to our November 30th remote meeting. All council committee members and staff are participating virtually. To have our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We are streaming live on the Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website. We also have the option for the public to listen live by phone by calling 855-925-2801. For today's meeting, we also have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 2689. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, speakers will need to push *3 to enter the speaker queue. I'm going to introduce our staff and committee members who are participating virtually. Give a quick hello when I call your name. Councilwoman Roney.
Good morning.
Councilwoman Sage Turner.
Hello.
Assistant City Manager Rachel Wood.
Good morning.
City Attorney Brad Branham.
Good morning, everyone.
Director of Communication and Public Engagement Dawa Hitch.
Good morning, everybody.
Director of Community and Economic Development Nikki Reed.
Good morning.
Economic Development Manager Rachel Taylor.
Good morning.
Director of Equity and Inclusion Brenda Mills.
Good morning.
And Equity and Inclusion Consultant Elena Smith.
Hello, everyone.
And Deputy Clerk Sarah Gross.
Good morning.
All right, we also have some guests and new staff members who will be introduced later at their point of presentation. We're going to move into the agenda now. Can I have a motion to approve October 17th meeting minutes?
This is Kim, so moved. Second.
All right, I'll do a roll call vote for approval. Councilwoman Roney.
Aye.
Councilwoman Turner.
Aye.
Myself, aye. The motion to approve the minutes carries. Now we'll move right into our next agenda item. We have an ARPA Community Engagement Academy update and progress report from Dawa Hitch. Dawa?
Good morning, everybody. Dawa Hitch, and I serve as the Communication and Public Engagement Director for the city. And I'm pleased to share this update with you on what we think is a pretty exciting project that's related to our ARPA funding, and that is an upcoming Community Engagement Academy. So we'll jump right in. So a few key takeaways from this presentation. We've been doing a number of these, but for anybody that's tuning in for the first time, the Community Engagement Academy is one of 4 components to our ARPA Inclusive and Accessible Government Project. So in addition to the components of a hybrid meetings, language accessibility, and the upfit of community spaces for access to local government, we have the one that we'll be talking about today, and that component is a Community Engagement Academy. And this project is seeking to improve neighborhood and climate resilience by addressing barriers to communication and public engagement. So a little bit about the vision for this. The vision is that all community members feel inspired to work in or with local government. And a guiding principle for the execution of this project is that we engage in iterative learning from frontline communities. The goal is to improve access to decision-making, minimize engagement fatigue, and to develop a pool of paid ambassadors and community champions. So we'll dig into the meat of just how we're planning on doing that. Next slide. All right, so we just spoke a little bit about the vision for the Academy. Again, I just wanted to share that it's really rooted in iterative learning from frontline communities. And you'll see as we walk through the presentation how we've reflected that in the development of the Academy. So there will be two-way information sharing through this project. First, government process. That will be an important component of this academy, and that will be in the realm of the consultants that we've hired, and we'll be introducing them here soon, and city staff. So recognizing that opportunities for our community to better understand government processes can improve accessibility and hopefully engagement. And then we really want to dig into what the community needs to inspire participation, and that's what we will be learning from project participants. So the hope is that city staff gets authentic feedback through the facilitator, our consultants, of the Engagement Academy, just so that there's a little bit more freedom for folks to speak exactly what's on their mind. And then after the academy, if interested, graduates will become part of a paid pool of community champions who can then support engagement efforts with groups who are underrepresented in a specific project or engagement that we have underway. So just from past learnings, we know that often we have people with disabilities, youth, our aged population, and often some BIPOC demographics that are missing from engagements. And so we're hoping to have better connections through folks who already have established networks in these different areas. Next slide. All right, so where did this idea come from? The vision was informed by feedback that we received from the community. And that there are a few examples here listed on the slide, and some of those from the community being empowered decision-making is needed to build trust. And so we really wanted to make sure that the design, the co-creation of this engagement took that into account so that it can be sustained in the long run. And we've also heard that frontline communities need to be meaningfully engaged. They want to see that their input that they've given is reflected in the outcome or the project that is underway. From staff, we've heard over the years that there are opportunities for better community understanding of government process. So that was certainly something that we also wanted to take into consideration. And then from City Council, in your vision, in your 2036 vision, it states, if you live, work, or play here, you want to be involved and you have a voice. So those were all some of the things that inspired the development of this Engagement Academy in this particular way. Next slide. All right, so if we're beginning with the end in mind, that end is that all people have access to decision-making and feel welcome to participate. That welcome to participate piece is really important. Community members are inspired to work in or with local government is another piece of that end in mind. Since we last presented on this in August of 2023, I just wanted to share some of the progress that we've made. So we've taken a deep dive into learnings from previous academies that the city has held. We released a request for proposals. We've been engaging with past participants to inform the design of this next academy, and that influenced the RFP. And then we've been able to select our consultants to co-create this academy. And then you'll hear a little bit more about some additional pieces of that. So upcoming, we're finalizing the contract with the consultants. In December, we will be co-designing our Asheville Academy, and our stands for Organizing and Uniting to Repower. It's a brand of Finley House, who is the consultants that we've chosen for this project, and we are just thrilled to be working with them and tap into the experience they have in this realm. And then we're anticipating that in January, we'll be announcing the first cohort of participants. Next slide. So a little bit about Finley House. We have got, I see 2 representatives. I just want to give them just a real quick chance to say hi and introduce themselves. So Cara Marie and Zipporah, if you just want to say hi to the folks here on the meeting, we'd love to hear from you.
Good morning, everyone. Wonderful to be here with you this morning. My name is Cara Marie Finley. I am the principal consultant with Finley House Global. And our mission is simple for us. We are a community and communications firm. And our mission is simply to collaborate with community members to assist them in providing community solutions. So when we saw this RFP come out regarding an engagement, a community outreach and engagement academy, we were quick to respond because this is something that we're passionate about. Usually we have to do a lot of priming to get people to understand the work that we do. But it was clear from the RFP that Asheville has already been thinking about how we can better engage community members in the government decision-making process. I'll allow Zipporah just to go ahead and introduce herself as well.
Yes, good morning, everyone. As Carmarie stated, it is a pleasure to be here. My name is Zipporah Orbisi, and I am the Director of Project Management with Finley House Global. I will be serving as stakeholder support and your main point of contact on this journey. And we are excited to see what the community has in store and support that process along the way.
Fantastic. So we are, again, we are just thrilled to be working with this team. And I wanted to give just a very quick example of some relevant experience that they have in this area and what really allowed them to rise through the top in the selection process. So the one that we picked is the National Own Your Story Initiative, and just a few little pieces about that were relevant to our project was the way that they were able to work with community members to actively contribute to the decision-making process at every level and as much as possible. And we think that that is definitely going to be critical in the co-creation of this Community Engagement Academy so that it's meaningful for the participants and hopefully can sustain itself over time. Through that particular effort, they were able to work with youth ambassadors from each community, and that was another piece, knowing that often youth are missing from our decision-making processes. That was really important to us, and we thought would be a really fantastic match for this particular project. And then just wanted to note that they've got extensive experience on the communication end of things as well, because we know a lot of times that's how we get people in the door. So again, we're really looking forward to tapping into all that great experience that they've got. Next slide. All right, so a little bit about the Academy. Certainly, again, the guiding principle is going to be iterative learning from frontline communities. The scope of the work for this, to just give you a little taste of what's going to be involved, Finley House will be customizing and co-designing an academy with community and staff members. So there will be 2 cohorts of 12 participants each. That gives, it's a nice size group to inspire rich dialogue, and then also for folks to have individual attention, knowing that capacity building is part of what is driving this effort. So with those 2 cohorts, it will be a Learn by Doing Leadership Academy, right? So that experiential learning we believe is really critical for sustained capacity building. It'll be personalized, and there will be relevant education and government decision making. So that's the piece where staff will be working with Finley House to make sure that that's integrated into the academy. So they'll also be on the ground research and reporting of findings, and it will culminate in an event and follow-up support. I want to say that again, follow-up support for Academy graduates, where they will be able to continue to work in that capacity building realm with individuals. And the opportunities are vast, right? We might be working with groups of people who one day will have their own engagement consulting business and want to do what we can to support that. So $500 stipends will be paid to 24 Academy graduates. 1 payment will be at the midway point, and 1 payment will be at graduation. So really appreciated the forethought that Finley House took into consideration in developing those staggered payments. And then again, capacity building support will be available for all participants for 1 year after graduation. Next slide. All right, so after graduation, participants can choose to be included in a pool of community champions for specific demographic groups, and a few of those are listed, and we mentioned them earlier. Maybe people with disabilities, youth, elders, BIPOC, people who identify as BIPOC. So their choice if they'd like to participate. If they would, city staff will be maintaining a contact list. And when an engagement effort that the city has underway shows underrepresentation in a certain demographic, city staff will then reach out to the graduates with a paid opportunity to bolster the city's engagement. So then those champions or the interested graduates will then be able to connect with their established networks, and hopefully we have a more inclusive and rounded participation in our engagement effort. Next slide. All right, so here we are back to those key takeaways. The Community Engagement Academy is one of the 4 components of our ARPA Inclusive and Accessible Government Project. This particular project, this component of it, is seeking to improve neighborhood and climate resilience by addressing barriers to communication and public participation. We hope, the vision is that community members feel inspired to work in or with local government. Guiding principle is iterative learning from frontline communities, and the goal is to improve access to decision-making, minimize engagement fatigue, and develop a pool of paid ambassadors and community champions. All right, I believe that is got our last slide. I'm happy to ask or to answer any questions from the committee. Councilmember Roney.
Well, first, I want to say thank you to Cara Marie and Zipporah for applying to be part of this co-building project with our community. I'm thankful that you are here and are ready to work with our neighbors. I have a couple questions around process. Seeing the demographics already named for where we've identified needs for outreach, and I'm thinking of our climate justice initiative. Can you speak a little bit to what it looks like to be prepared to work with, say, our Spanish-speaking community?
Sure. Well, and then this, I'll take this one, Cara Marie, if that's okay with you, because we do have a language accessibility staff member that will be available, and then we've got so that will be reflected in outreach for this particular project. And if there are language barriers within, then we've got resources within our organization to help with interpretation.
And then I guess the next curiosity is I was looking through y'all's portfolio and some of the work that y'all have done. What are some of the ways that you might have gotten into some civic processes and maybe some exciting opportunities or challenges that we can expect and support you in this co-building process?
Thank you for that question and for even reviewing our portfolio. One thing that we're passionate about is that capacity building so that people understand the government processes that are affecting their day-to-day life and making sure that they're aware of it. So, for example, we worked with Kent County, Maryland, and one of the things in working with youth there was they learned a lot about federal government and state government, but they didn't know how their local government worked. And so letting them know, you have this group of county commissioners. There is a process if you want to get something on the docket, just explaining that to them. So that civic engagement piece, educating people on that process and making it as accessible as possible through the language that we use is something that we do. So challenges, a lot of times when you're bringing people together in an academy setting, something that we experience, I would say, working with even Own Your Story and the steering committee in each city that was composed of community members, is sometimes people want to talk about a topic that may not be on the agenda for that day. But we found that it's very important as far as rapport building to still address a person's concerns and then let them know that, we may need to discuss this topic more offline or at another time but we definitely want people to know that we care about the issues that are affecting them, that we understand there may be frustrations from past experience with trying to engage with the government. And our role is we first want to listen to them, but we also want to encourage them and give them hope. As Dawa mentioned, we repower in our language, our framework, repower development. We don't believe in the term empowerment. We believe that people already have that intrinsic power and we really just want to ignite it because they have solutions, they have ideas around solutions, and we just want to kind of take them through a process where we're able to draw that out and help them create a system where they can engage with the government along government guidelines.
Thank you so much for that. Dawa, can you either restate or help me to zoom in on when the application process is expected for folks to engage in this program?
Yes, I'm happy. So that will be coming in the next couple of months. We've got some final details, and Cara Marie, if you want to hop in on that one, our goal right now, and there's a few pieces of the contracting piece that have been delayed a little bit. So that's why there is hesitation. I want to make sure that we're setting Finley House up to do their best work. But we have been aiming for being able to announce the cohort towards the end of January, which means the application process would probably be coming sometime towards the end of December, in the next few weeks, end of December, January timeframe. But we may need to push that back a few weeks based on finalizing the contract. Cara Marie, did you want to add anything there?
Yeah, so one thing that I'd add as part of our work in our due diligence is becoming aware with some of the organizations and influencers there in Asheville, because we want to make sure that we are reaching out to them and making them aware, so that, for example, if it's the pastor of a church, that they're able to share that information with their members, or an organization. Climate justice is something that was mentioned that is passionate about climate justice, letting the school system know. So we'll be doing due diligence on our part just to communicate the opportunity and incentivize it as much as possible so that we receive applications once that window does open.
And we feel pretty good about that timeline, knowing that that may sound short to some people, but knowing that we've been managing different demographic group contact lists for folks that have been historically missing from our engagement, we'll be able to tap into that with them, and that'll give them a really great jump start. And so a lot of that's coming from our Your Choice, Your Voice survey that's available online. Little advertisement there. You can find that on the front page of the city's website by just hitting the engage button at the top, and then you can self-identify different groups that you identify with, and then we know we can reach out to you and invite you into engagement opportunities. So those are both organizations and individuals. So we feel good about having a good jumping off spot for us to be able to move quickly on the application piece of this.
Thank you.
Excellent work. Thank you, Dawa.
You're welcome.
Thank you to your guests for joining us.
All right. Thank you all.
All right, we'll move to our next agenda item, the Strategic Partnership Grant Round 4 updates. We'll have Rachel Taylor present and update us.
Great, thank you. So yes, I'm Rachel Taylor. I'm the Economic Development Division Manager. And Katie, next slide. And so I'm presenting updates about round 4 as we head into December. So our key takeaways for today are that the Strategic Partnership Grant focus, the scope of the program is focused on closing the opportunity gap for school-age children from low to moderate income households. And the focus areas and evaluation criteria have been and will continue to be based off of that scope and included in the grant guidelines and in all supporting materials for the application and evaluation process. Staff is seeking Equity and Engagement Committee feedback on the grant evaluation criteria, rationale, and priority areas for evaluation. The evaluation process will continue to build on recommendations from this committee, such as involving CALA students, external partners, and other subject matter experts. Staff is currently planning to open applications for the next round of funding in December of this year. Next slide. So here's a brief timeline of this grant program as it was relaunched in July 22 with this new scope. So it was relaunched that summer of 22. We're kind of calling this round 1 and trying to establish some conventions moving forward. So round 1 was in July. In fiscal year 23, 8 of the 9 round 1 awardees were fully executed agreements, received fully executed agreements and received payment. And then from May 22 to January 23, staff from multiple departments participated in the GARE North Carolina Learning Community and applied those project principles to this grant program. And then in January and February of 23, we presented to the Equity and Engagement Committee. And then from February to April, round 1 applications were opened and the evaluation period was conducted. And so, and then in October of 2023, the round 3 award process was conducted. So in October, now in fiscal year 2024, all of the round 2 awardees have fully executed agreements, and we anticipate the round 3 agreement to be fully executed in January of 24. And so as we head into December, we will open the round 4 applications and expect that evaluation process to happen likely in February of next year, 2024. And so on December 15th, the round 4 applications will open. And by May of 2024, we anticipate that all round 4 agreements will be fully executed. Next slide. And so an interdisciplinary staff team participated in this GARE learning cohort. We chose the Strategic Partnership Grant Program to apply the program principles in order to create a shared definition and understanding of the opportunity gap and eligibility criteria categories. Next slide. So our program focus areas are related to the grant program's scope of closing the opportunity gap. So some of the opportunity gap key indicators are defined below, and these really define and influence the focus areas for the program and are the drivers of the evaluation criteria. So we specifically call out the educational gap indicators. These can be understood and used to leverage and build on the educational elements of the opportunity gap. And so one particular indicator that applies to this grant program is the average test scores. This is a good snapshot that is influenced by all of the educational opportunities a child experiences, like opportunities at home, after school programs, childcare, preschool. We also focus on the network and resource gap indicators, including first generation low income. And so this would look like maybe a lack of formal mentoring programs. The network gap would look like potentially seeing a lack of transportation to programming and educational opportunities, and also programming in neighborhoods. The income gap and resource gap indicators, again, are those presence or lack thereof of student support programs for these students. And then the digital divide, providing internet connectivity and accessibility for these students. Next slide. So our grant scoring process is that the applications are reviewed first for eligibility and then are reviewed by an evaluation work group to include CALA students and subject matter experts. This will support the following goals: to ensure that the applications are complete and eligible, and ensure that awarded activities include effective operations and services that meet the program's scope. The evaluation work group will provide an analysis of the project's ability to meet community needs, as well as the applicant's ability to successfully implement the project. The funding recommendations will be based on highest ranked projects and on fully funding allocations, though lower scoring projects may be considered for partial funding if the project meets a critical need. Awards are recommended for each eligible application based on scoring criteria and then voted on by this committee and then City Council. Next slide. So our scoring criteria is aligned with Buncombe County's Strategic Partnership Grant scoring criteria, and these include the need for the project. So we want to be sure that this meets an essential community need and fits with the program focus areas. We'll go into more detail on the next slide. That it has a project plan that is clear and reasonable, presents clear and reasonable actions that are likely to meet the need. Proposed results. The project includes quantifiable results and a plan for measuring success. Capacity. The organization is structured to complete the project as it is described. Equity. The organization has a demonstrated commitment to equity that is reflected in the project. And budget, which would include a clear and reasonable and efficient budget matched to the proposed project. Scoring is based on a scale of 1 to 5 with a maximum total score of 30, and each criterion is weighted equally. Next slide. So here's a breakdown of the grant focus areas. So this ties back in with those indicators that we talked about for the opportunity gap. So the first focus area is to geared towards addressing the educational gap by providing access to educational opportunities. And so examples of this type of programming could be things like tutoring, literacy programming, language, STEAM activities, teaching computer skills, those types of activities. The next focus area is geared towards addressing the network gap and is intended to build networks and readiness for success. It addresses the first generation low income and network gaps. And so examples of this type of programming could include internships, apprenticeships, mentorships, field trips, cultural events, and financial literacy skills. And then the third focus area is to address the resource gap by providing access to support services and resources. And so again, that's getting at the income and resource gap indicators as well as the digital divide. And this could look like programming geared towards access to mental health, health services, college preparatory assistance, food security, and increased connectivity to internet support or other activities. So these examples are not complete, but just meant to give a picture of the types of activities we might expect to see as they relate to each focus area. Next slide. And so the application process and focus area recommendations, we traditionally have had applicants present to this committee prior to the committee making funding decisions. This was typically a specially scheduled meeting of this committee, and applicants were given 2 to 3 minutes to present live. For this round, we recommend changing this process from live presentations to 3-minute pre-recorded videos that will be submitted electronically by applicants. And then the grant focus areas are tied directly to those opportunity gap key indicators. So based on feedback from prior committee meetings, grant recipients, GARE best practices, we recommend the following priority focus areas. And again, that is to provide access to educational opportunities, building networks and readiness for success, and providing access to student support services and resources. Next slide. And so again, our focus areas and evaluation criteria are again addressing the grant program scope and in alignment with that scope. And we'll continue to include those grant guidelines, include the evaluation criteria in the grant guidelines and in all the supporting material for the application process and the evaluation process. Again, today we're seeking your feedback on these criteria and the priority focus areas. We will continue to build on your recommendations for the evaluation process to include CALA students, external partners, and other subject matter experts. And again, we will plan to open the applications for round 4 on December 15th, 2023. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Rachel. I'm glad to see the, I guess for CDBG and home funds or CDBG, we're moving to those same pre-recorded. And I just think that's really helpful both for the fluidity of the presentations, but also for the applicant. You know, they can practice and get it right and send us their best take, remove some stress. So thank you for changing that here too. It's a great idea.
This is Kim. I guess my curiosity is from our last conversation around strategic partnership funds is we made a recommendation to pursue additional funds, and I haven't seen an update from that. I don't know if it's something that we need to forward to the full council for consideration, or if there's a different process that staff would like to take around our recommendation, but Not sure what follow-up looks like, but I'd love to know more.
So thank you for that comment, Councilmember Roney. And I would need to go back. I'm not sure if there was a formal vote of the committee taken endorsing support of additional funds. I apologize. I recall you making that comment. I know that our finance department is aware that that comment was made, but I'm not clear if there was formal action taken by the full committee or not. Regardless, it would need to be something that would travel through the budget process, or there would need to probably be a conversation at the Policy, Finance, and HR Committee regarding a mid-year special appropriation, if that is the will of this committee and of the Policy, Finance, and HR Committee. So would be looking to hear from Councilmember Smith and Councilmember Turner if that's something that you want us to work on identifying even what the path forward would look like if we were to do a mid-year appropriation to identify potentially additional funds. I can't guarantee that the finance department is going to say that they've got those funds available, but we can certainly work with them to look at what our options are.
I don't remember if there was a formal vote, but I believe that we were all on the same page. We being the three of us were all on the same page about directing staff to look at some potential ways that we can up our pool of funds. I'm sure that the three of us could probably propose some ways to make that happen, but I don't know. I think we wanted to give you all the opportunity to come back with some recommendations. Is that correct, Kim?
So we can, and I apologize, Councilmember Roney, I was aware of the request, and again, we've made the finance department aware, but this is just a little bit atypical, not happening as part of the budget process. So what I can do between now and our January meeting, work with the finance department. They can come forward with some ideas, and then they can also have a companion presentation that would go to the Policy, Finance, and HR Committee to get feedback from both groups before traveling to full council.
Yeah, I think in the spirit of my previous recommendation was that often we see that there's unanticipated funds, maybe it's from additional sales tax revenue or something like that. And by making this recommendation, my hope is that it would be prioritized if we were looking for other ways to do one-time allocations of funds. It's not uncommon that we have that mid-year or towards the end of the budget cycle. So it would help if we got ahead of the conversation instead of reacting late in the process.
I don't really have.
I'm sorry.
I don't have anything really to add, just to echo that I do remember us talking about it. And we didn't take a vote, but there was definitely our interest. I also kind of thought it meant more than just our own budget. Are there community partners? Are there other monies out there, not just our own budget? So I don't know how we begin to look at something like that, but yeah, I'm in support of looking for more funds. And if there is a mid-year or adjustment possible, I mean, we can, like Shanika said, we could come up with a specific request, but you guys seem to know where things are.
Yeah, we can at least take a first pass. I know the finance department would probably prefer to make a recommendation and then receive feedback, just because as you indicated, Councilmember Turner, they do have their finger on the pulse of where potential sources may be. And really quickly, Rachel Taylor has a new staff person on that want to have an opportunity to introduce you all to as well.
Thank you, Rachel. And yes, I apologize. I just dove straight into the presentation, but Charlie, can you come on and introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Charlie Savage. I am the new Economic Development Specialist. I'll be working with Rachel moving forward.
Welcome.
We're excited to have Charlie's help, and he will be working with me on this grant program. Thank you.
Welcome, Charlie. Charlie, are you already Asheville or did you relocate?
A little bit of both. So I've about 3 years I've been here. I came up here for my MPA degree, but originally I'm from Louisiana.
Awesome. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, it seems that we don't have any additional feedback to offer you, Rachel, but Kim, it seems like we do need a formal motion in order for finance to look for additional funds for the.
Yeah, I was just looking through my notes as I remember already doing this, but I would move to recommend that staff bring forward some potential recommendations for increasing our available strategic partnership funds in this budget cycle.
Gosh, I think that makes me think you did do this already.
I did, but I'm
Yeah.
looking at my notes.
And I apologize if
No
I
worries.
could have just completely misremembered that. I sincerely apologize for that oversight.
There's like 40 committees. It's okay, Rachel, but thank you. We'll do it again.
All right, is there a second?
Mhm.
All right, roll call vote. Councilwoman Roney,
Aye.
Councilwoman Turner,
Aye.
myself, aye, motion carries. Thank you, Rachel, and welcome, Charles. We'll move to the next agenda item. We have a presentation from Brenda Mills on reparations and the status of Stop the Harm.
So before I get started, I'm going to go ahead and introduce all my new staff people. So if they'll come on camera, that would be great. As you know, I will be ending my wonderful long-term relationship with the city at the end of January. We're currently in the process of working on hiring the director, but until then, I took one of our equity and inclusion consultant positions and made it into a manager position. So I'm very excited to introduce you to Kendra Tashoma. And she comes to us from planning. Kendra, are you there? I'm sorry, the presentation is up, so I can't see who's up.
Yes,
are you
I'm
there?
here.
You'll introduce yourself and
Of course.
a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brenda. So as Brenda said, my name is Kendra Tashoma, and I come to Equity and Inclusion by way of the planning department. I was previously a long-range planner here with the city of Asheville. Prior to that, I also worked in planning in the city of Savannah and also in Statesboro, Georgia. It's great to be here, and I look forward to working with the committee.
Thank you, Kendra. And then, as you know, this is Elena's last day. So we'll be out at Highland Brewing at 5 o'clock if you guys want to come by and say goodbye. And we have hired Julian West, who started 2 weeks ago as the new Equity and Inclusion consultant. Julian, would you introduce yourself and say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Julian West here, coming to you from California for the last 15 or so years. My background is mainly in higher education. I've worked as an educational advisor, director, dean, researcher, and also instructor as well. For the last couple of years, I've been doing some consulting for DEI for various organizations, but very glad to be here. I'm very excited about working within this new realm.
And last but totally not least is Mr. Marcus Kirkman. He is our continuing employee as an equity and inclusion consultant, doing an excellent job around our training and consulting. Marcus, would you come on and introduce yourself?
Good morning. Good to see everybody, and glad to be here.
So anyway, we're going to get started with the reparations update. Next slide, Ms. Katie. Thank you. So our key takeaways today is that at the last meeting, November 6th of the Community Reparations Commission, we provided an update on the change to the project management plan and process. We heard the city and county provided an update on our community engagement and outreach efforts. We heard an update from the impact focused area groups. And we'll be talking about that a little bit more in this slide, this presentation. We had a discussion around the resolution and the justification for extension of the Community Reparations Commission term. As you know, their term is slated to end April 2024. They made an original ask, and so we'll talk to you a little bit more about that. Preparations for the December meeting for the impact focus areas, and then I'll provide a monthly update on the Cease to Harm audit. Next slide. So in terms of our, there's a document in there, which I'm sure you guys have kind of perused, but we came back to the commission with a plan around how we could do the project management moving forward. We've had some changes in how everybody's work is going on. I'm very excited to say we have a new facilitator, Venetia Crawford. She helped us with our retreat in July. She's helped support them in September around the definition of reparations and comes to us from Charlotte, North Carolina. Her background is in trauma-informed care and as a facilitator, and she's done an amazing job just far. She'll support our monthly meetings as a facilitator, debrief meetings, setting agendas, and providing strategic oversight. The project manager will move into a project administrator role, so she'll just be taking care of the payroll for paying our facilitators and paying our reparation commission members. We didn't think it was a good idea to move 30 people again. And so she'll take care of that until we end until we end the contract. Next slide. In addition, the Equity and Inclusion Department, with additional cross-departmental support, will communicate with the Community Reparations Commission and coordinate meeting logistics. Kendra Tashoma, who you just met, is part of that logistics team. She'll be leading that up for at least the first 90 days with the new director and making sure that we have a flawless communication with the CRC, just getting them prepared for each meeting. We have a new IFA administrator, Salah Manai Merritt, who you have met at some points with the IFA updates. We'll support the group facilitators and the IFAs by attending the meetings. She's already stepped in even before ask. We meet weekly with them just to kind of keep them up to date on where we're going. We're really trying to hone in on those recommendations. So she's been a really driving and wonderful force for that. And then the reparations report process, as you know, we're supposed to end with a report just prior to that with an evaluation. And so that team will include the Equity and Inclusion Director and Manager, staff from Data and Performance for the city, the county's Chief Equity and Human Rights Officer, Ms. Dr. Norio Armstrong, and then Special Collections Manager, Ms. Catherine Cutshaw. Next slide. So, City and County, we wanted to give sort of an update and a presentation to the commission. I know when you get into doing monthly meetings, it's easy to kind of slip around and not really talk about all the things we've done. So there's a presentation there that we provided to them about what we've done thus far and what we hope to do in the future. Now, as you know, we're trying to bring this to a close in the next 6 to 7 months. So we really want to hone in on some things that we can do. And a couple of things we talked about is that, you know, our commissioners are also our advocates. They represent neighborhoods, they represent impact focus areas. So we're going to do what we can to support attending those neighborhood meetings more regularly so that we can give an update to those specific 7 neighborhoods that were represented in the in reparations. And then our next step and ideas are, you know, to really kind of bolster them, as well as look at ways in which we can start to do more advocacy. We advertise in the urban news. We've had radio shows. We will continue to do a lot of those things because, you know, you got to reach people as communications and public engagement. We have to do a diversity of things to kind of reach people in all the ways that they hear from news. Next slide. So we heard from all the impact focus area groups. It was basically a general update. We provided feedback in late September to the from the city and county to the current recommendations that they've kind of fleshed out. One main request from the IFAs is to have our staff attend their IFAs for further discussion. So we're in the process of doing that. And the goal was to kind of get with them, and I think we have with our IFAs, but we're going to do another round of that coming up in January. Next slide. So there was a very robust discussion around the resolution. The initial term they asked for was another 2 years. At their October meeting, they modified that to the extension to December 2024. The county commission was briefed on this request at their November 21st briefing, and the city council will be briefed on December 7th around the extension and what staff is proposing. There was no formal term or timeline approved by the city or the county for reparations resolutions. And then there's a workable plan is in place to have the recommendations finalized and a report drafted by the summer 2024. Staff will continue to provide support needed to ensure the success of this important effort. And one of the things we're going to do in really supporting that is we're not trying to change their recommendations, but we really want to help them get them into a format. There's a format and form provided by our Just Last project manager. And so we're in the process of helping them get to that point. And the other thing, which I overlooked, we did lose one of our commission members within the last month. Mr. Bernard Oliphant passed away. And so we're bolstering that community didn't have a lot of representatives. So we will do our best to support Heart of Chestnut in all the ways that we can to get some things over the goal line. She supports health and wellness, and he was supporting economic development. Next slide. So in preparation for the December meeting, Salam and I, Merritt, our new IFA administrator, talked about next steps for the IFA. So we have a plan set out for December, January, and February, in which you'll hear from each of the IFAs. There are certain IFAs that have similar recommendations, so they'll be working together as a group. We will hear from education and economic development on this meeting on Monday, December 4th. And then we will hear about their individual recommendations. And the goal is that we would have robust discussion from the commission, the full commission, on the recommendations from these IFAs as they come to the meetings and provide those updates. Next slide. In terms of giving you an update on the Cease to Harm audit, it is going very, very well. We're in the phase of cohort meetings, which have occurred October, November. I think there's one more to do because we had some scheduling issues, as you might be aware. We're looking at all the 5 impact focus areas and also including in that internal workforce and equity and legal. Next slide. These cohort meetings that we've done, they will be coming back around to the cohorts to make sure that we're clear on operations, any kind of information, additional information. They've been asking for that thus far over the last few weeks, but we've had really good cohort meetings. I've been able to attend all but maybe one. And so it's been really great conversation. They have a team for each one of those 7 focus areas. So the other day we talked with Parks around health and wellness. So there's they have consultants that are working in the area of health and wellness and other things. So it's been really great. They'll give a preliminary report. Is planned for January 2024 to city staff, county staff, and the Community Reparations Commission for their feedback. A final report is to be delivered by the end of February 2024. And then presentations to City Council and Board of Commissioners is planned for March. Next slide. So as we said, we did for the November 6th meeting, we give an update on the project management, heard about our community engagement and outreach efforts that also included our Community Reparations Commission members as well. An update on the impact focus area groups was heard. We discussed the resolution and justification with the CRC, and then preparation for the December meeting to get into a deep dive with the impact focus areas. And then I provided you an update with Cease to Harm, and I'll take any questions you may have.
What's the basis on the extension?
The basis?
Yeah, like what is the idea behind
They
extending?
felt like that they had done good work, but needing more time for research and other stuff. And we went back to them to say, what our governing bodies might need to hear is what you've accomplished, and a little deeper dive into what, beyond what you've done in these 20 months, what is going to be different. So that if we get to that, if it's approved and we get to that 2-year mark, that we're not asking for 2 more years. They had concerns about giving justifications, and their discussion got them to December of next year. And in the county briefing, which you probably are aware of, they're proposing that they go to June. Now, our justification is because we did not expect the immediate recommendation for the Cease to Harm. That's taken up some time to get done. So we're working on one of the recommendations actively. while we're doing this process. And we also want them to have time, because with the cease to harm audit, you're going to get more policy, more recommendations around the internal workings of the city and the county, which will be very helpful to the Community Reparations Commission. Yes, ma'am.
So it's been so informative to be able to review the archives of these meetings, but also to be able to be in the room for part of them. And one of the things that I've been hearing as a common thread in the ask for extension is that it takes time to get the data to make the recommendations. And that's in a lot of ways the ownership of the systems, like the city of Asheville and the county, to get them the data so they can make recommendations. So I just wanted to not forget to name that that's what I'm hearing.
Gotcha.
Another thing I'm hearing is we appointed alternates and now there's open seats. So what does the process look like for an alternate to become a fully recognized voting member versus are we going to open those seats for reappointment?
So I'm going to respond to both of your comments. Thank you so much. Those are great comments. The data is pretty much done. We're at about 90% for the data that we can provide. There's data that we cannot provide. Ergo, that's where Catherine Cutshaw, Special Collections Manager, comes in. She's done some periphery research, a lot of research. And so we've helped with the stuff that we don't have control over or can't get information for. We have provided that. So we have a team that meets once a month. We're meeting on Monday to chat more about but basically we're pretty much done with everything that they need. Now we've had to do some back and forth because one of the things that was happening, we were just getting popcorn data requests that didn't match anything. And so we wanted to make sure we were giving them what they needed. So we're there with the data unless we get anything that's new and beyond what we've already gotten. And then for the vacancies, you should see the alternates. We just lost a member on the city appointed side. So we will be putting those alternates up for moving to full commission membership. We only have the one opening. I don't think the county is replacing. They lost one of their alternates. I don't think they're replacing it at this point.
So does council need to take action on that, or is there like an automatic?
It's not automatic. We're going to bring it to you because there's two alternates and we have one spot. So that'll be brought to the Boards and Commissions Committee. And then we'll advertise. We're going to advertise for the vacancy, but we already have our alternates.
And then the third thing that I'm hearing a lot in the room is since the budget for reparations is fairly new, could we get some detailed analysis of the budget? And having seen that come from the county side and also understanding we're going to be getting some updates to the council, I think that will help to inform how the resources are currently being allocated. Because I am hearing if the contract is going to be extended, that it should not come out of the budget allocated for reparations. So that's just one of the concerns of many that I'm hearing, but wanted to lift those up here today.
That sounds good. We have a budget document ready and prepared that not only has our detail, but also what the county responded to as well. So they'll get that at their meeting in December 4th. We're posting that, post that today. And then the city in specific set aside the $2.1 million from the sale of White Labs to fund this process. And so we have used our money for this process. The additional funding, we do have to pay the facilitator, and then there's the additional funding to pay stipends for the commission. So, but thank you for lifting that up.
Sure. And then let's see, from the county, I had this, Dr. Armstrong did send some updates from the county as well. And I understood that was going to be in our update packet to council. So thank you for Rachel sending that out.
Absolutely. Can I answer any other questions? Thank you so much.
If that's it, you can move on to the Equity Action Plan.
All right, Miss Katie. Very excited to come to you with this. So to start out with our key takeaways, City Council 2036 vision prioritizes an equitable and diverse community. The city uses the racial equity lens to review and achieve strategic goals. The organization now has a shared definition and understanding of racial equity, and a new racial equity action plan for the current fiscal year is now completed to support City Council's 2036 vision via strategic priorities. Next slide. So your vision emphasizes that Asheville is an inclusive and diverse community. We define diversity broadly, including but not limited to all races, sexual orientation, gender identification, socioeconomic backgrounds, and cultural beliefs. We use a racial equity lens to review and achieve our city's strategic goals in health, education, housing, and economic mobility. Next slide. So the city is a member of the Government Alliance on Race and Equity and has used their resources to help support our efforts in advancing racial equity as follows: training staff in the areas of racial equity, use of tools that support our planning and decision-making processes, such as the Racial Equity Toolkit and other tools, the development of equity core teams in the past to support specific efforts such as equitable budgeting, contracting, diversity of internal workforce, and diversity in our boards and commissions. Next slide. So definitions of equity and racial equity, and we derive these definitions from the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, and we have promulgated those throughout our organization in our trainings and in the work that we do with our departments. But equity is just and fair inclusion into a society in which all can participate, prosper, and reach their full potential. Racial equity is a process of eliminating racial disparities and improving outcomes for everyone. It is the intentional and continual practice of changing policies, practices, systems, structures by prioritizing measurable change in the lives of people of color. Next slide. So our process: in the early calendar year of 2022, equity and inclusion staff were appointed as liaisons to all city departments. So every department has a liaison from the equity office. In the fall of 2022, the departments were introduced to the equity action planning and use of the equity toolkit process by equity and inclusion liaisons. In the spring, we hosted a racial equity action plan training for all department representatives and leadership. So you could send anybody you wanted. We had almost 90 people who attended that training. So it was very well attended by leadership and by their staff. Spring and summer, we started the technical assistance. Now, all of this is being done through the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, and I should have said that. Technical assistance was provided to all departments in developing their plans. What we realized is that it probably needed to be done in person for the first 2 sessions. So the consultant came here to Asheville and met with departments over a 2-day period in June and July. And in the fall, late summer, we did all of the follow-ups. They pretty much had their plans just about ready. We did those virtually over a 2.5-day period. Late fall, we did a follow-up training. We thought it was important to do a follow-up training on everything that the staff had been through, what they had learned. And one of the things on leading for racial equity, with all the racial equity action plan teams and the leadership. And we did a training on the first day for all leadership, department heads, executive team. Any persons that couldn't make it on the second day could come on the first day. The second day was mostly populated by the teams that worked on the equity action plans. And then one of the wonderful things that we did is they talked about the plans. We let each department talk about their plans. Next slide. So some of the things that came up, thanks to Marcus Kirkman, he helped me on this, and our wonderful staff here. Access to government, decision-making and community engagement, policy and process, workforce equity was a huge one, and equity and planning. Next slide. So your new plan is, our new plan and our desired outcomes come from the City Council's FY 23-24 strategic goals. You have 6: to improve and expand core services, reparations, reimagining public safety, homelessness strategies, equitable and affordable housing and stability, and neighborhood and climate resilience. So from what we want to do is we want to go from your goals to what are your specific goals for this particular fiscal year. And the equity office, along with the GEAR consultant, came up with the desired outcomes. The department used those desired outcomes to come up with their strategies for how they were going to advance racial equity. Next slide. So the new plan is set up this way. Here are your strategic goals, the desired results of what we came up with with GEAR and through our department. And we did get some really great ideas around those desired results from departments as we went along this process. And then the community indicators. So we're going to improve and expand the core services. One of the desired results is that the city of Asheville is a model employer that understands and advances racial equity. And one of the community indicators, which we had a lot, was the recruitment and hiring processes are aligned with equitable and inclusive best practices. If we look at homelessness strategies, all systems and resources work together to end homelessness in Asheville. That's a desired result. And one of the indicators was that a governance work group has developed a new draft governance charter to create a continuum of care board outside of the city and county, and has formalized the membership body of stakeholders. This membership includes people with lived experience. So it's not just enough to say we're going to advance racial equity. How are we going to do that? And then what should we see as indicators? A part of the next slide, Katie. So our current plan is a living document. I do want to emphasize that. I pulled their equity action plans for this current year at a point in time. They will continue to work with these strategies. Some of them are multi-year. One of the strategies in particular is around data. How are we going to collect data? So between our Office of Data and Performance, our IT department, and the analysts and the staff, analysts leading this, but with our equity staff, we will be helping them to look at how do we pull data to allow us to understand if we're doing the performance that we need to have. Our current desired results and community indicators are for this current year, and like I said, correspond to your annual priorities. The departments will continue throughout this current year to work on their strategies. And as liaisons meeting with these departments, one of the things in our meetings is to talk about this equity action plan. We're already seeing folks, or we're already meeting with people and seeing them going ahead and putting their equity action plans into work. We will begin organizational work plan development for the next fiscal year. Departments will assess their progress and make necessary updates to the plans. And then some plan items will be multi-year, as I mentioned. One of the great things about this, and it's not a better, it's just a next step, because I got the fortunate to be the second director and not the first, is that the culture in our city really has become very open and ready to work when it comes to advancing racial equity. I thought it was important as a director when I was hired that everyone go through this process, because when you look at the plan, it's not just 1 or 2 people or 10 people, it is the whole city. So every department has a part in this plan to make it successful. Next slide. So when you look at their plans, and I will have a finalized document in the next few weeks, when you look at capital projects, these are their strategies for things they want to do for the year. One of the things that was emphasized with our consultant and with our department is you don't want 20 things that you have to do within a year. And also, are there things that you're already working on where adding that racial equity lens would enhance what you're doing? So capital projects, for example, workforce equity improved to eliminate racial disparities in hiring and promotions and improvement in retention rates. Contracting and procurement equity improved. The city manager's office, departments have resources needed to provide equitable services to all in the city of Asheville. City manager's office staff will have tools and resources needed to provide equitable service to all residents in the city, and the implementation of the cease to harm recommendations for reparations. So these are some examples, and you'll get a full report. I think it was linked to a couple of slides ago. Next slide. I thought it was important to let you know all the people who participated in this process. I will say without a hesitation. We never got any pushback, only just really great questions, really great engagement. The department directors were a part of this with their departments. The only team I didn't add in here was the wonderful equity and inclusion department. We could not have done this without me and my staff. They were amazing in working with these departments. Just a few highlights. Water, Pamela Irvin is a project manager for water, and she was asked by David to lead this process. A little nervous, we got started. They not only put together a great racial equity action plan, they created a video. They went around to all the divisions in the water, because water is spread out everywhere. They went to all of the staff. They talked to them about the racial equity action plan. One of the things they're doing with the support of HR is a survey, because they want to not only improve hiring and recruitment, but we know once people get here, what makes them stay, what is not making them stay, what makes them stay, and if the current staff have concerns, what are those? So in conjunction with their department director and assistant director, they sent out a survey, which they will be looking at, but they did a fantastic job. The city manager's office, I'm gonna always highlight them. The executive team is a busy group of people, as you know. And I am their liaison. I work with Jamie on this and just really appreciate their support. They were behind us 100%. So yeah, next slide. I think that's it. Yeah, so like I said, the Equity Action Plan is based on your vision of equitable and diverse community. The city uses a racial equity lens to review and achieve our strategic goals. Now we're going to really do that because of this plan. And then the organization now has a shared definition and understanding of racial equity. A new racial equity action plan for current fiscal year is now completed that supports Council's 2036 vision and your strategic priorities. And one of the things I want to say is we talk about the shared definition. When equity started here at the city in 2017, you can imagine that most people had their concerns. We did I think the equity team at the time did a survey, and it really made people uncomfortable. So the really defining what equity is and what racial equity is has done a lot to help people understand it's about all of us. It's all about all of us being able to thrive and to do what we need to as part of this, our community of the city, internal staff, as well as what we do to our external community. So with that, I'll see if you have any questions. And thank you for this time.
Excellent work. Thank you, Brenda. Any questions?
Wow, I didn't get a question from Councilwoman Roney.
I'm thankful to listen to your presentation today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So I think next we're still it. So we're going to introduce Ms. Elena Schmidt.
Are you muted, Brenda?
Hello, everyone. As Brenda mentioned earlier, my name is Elena Schmidt. I am the analyst in the Equity and Inclusion Department for the last time. Today is my last day, and this is the last presentation that I will be giving as a staff member of the City of Asheville. So this is bittersweet. We're celebrating, sharing the results of some research that staff has done, but it's also a bit sad because I'm saying farewell. So I'm presenting to you the results of some research that staff have done around boards and commissions, compensation, and accommodation. Next slide, please. So in case there's anyone watching who can only stay for part of this presentation, here are the key takeaways. The Policy Equity Analysis Team, which I will introduce and explain more later, took on the task of exploring accommodations and compensation for boards and commissions to promote equity and have diverse representation in our membership. Asheville's accommodations, according to our study or our research, are comparable to most other jurisdictions that we looked at. There's very little benchmarking data for compensation of boards and commission members. So there's not a lot that we had to go on as far as comparisons. This is an opportunity for Asheville to be among the first to measure any outcomes associated with providing compensation to boards and commission members if we choose to implement such a program. Community outreach among Asheville's communities would provide a more complete understanding of needs related to compensation and accommodation for boards and commission members. And some of our findings point to a need to consider structural changes to improve equity and accessibility in our boards and commissions. Next slide, please. So the Policy Equity Analysis Team is an interdepartmental team of city staff led by the Equity and Inclusion Department. We have membership in our team from the City Attorney's Office, from Communications and Public Engagement, from Human Resources, from the Office of Budget and Performance in Finance, and from the City Clerk's Office for this particular project. We will also pull in additional representatives from other departments as needed. For example, for this particular research with boards and commissions, accommodations and compensation, we pulled in Sarah Gross from the clerk's office to provide support with our research. The Policy Equity Analysis Team was formed in March of 2022 to help analyze city policies and practices for equity. We've previously analyzed the existing abandoned vehicle ordinance in the city, and we analyzed a proposed single-use plastics ordinance that came up last year, I believe. Next slide, please. So this research could not have happened without all of the members of the Policy Equity Analysis Team. So I just wanted to take a moment to name everyone who contributed their time and their thoughtfulness to this project. Sarah Gross from the Clerk's Office, Taylor Morris from Legal, Ricardo Tapia Basurto from Communications and Public Engagement, Brenda Mills, our wonderful Director of Equity and Inclusion, Natalie Bailey from Finance, Sam Parada from Communications and Public Engagement, Marcus Kirkman from Equity, Jack Henry from Human Resources, and then myself, Elena, from the Office of Department of Equity and Inclusion. We also had members of the Realignment Working Group who were involved in reviewing and providing some really helpful feedback on the early stages of drafting the summary report from this analysis. And we also used the results of the survey that Realignment Working Group members had sent out to existing and former boards and commission members. So we appreciated the work that they've done, which helped us with our own analysis. Next slide, please. So there are some acronyms that are going to come up on the slides. I'll just go ahead and tell you what those mean. If you see B and C, that's boards and commissions, also known as advisory boards. If you see BCAC, that stands for boards and commissions, accommodations, and compensation. P-Team, PEA team, is Policy Equity Analysis Team. And then RWG is Realignment Working Group. Next slide, please. So the research on boards and commissions, accommodations, and compensation, the purpose for this research was to have diverse representation on our boards and commissions by assessing potential barriers to participation. To do this, we did an environmental scan and drafted some policy recommendations. Specifically, we reviewed the work of other cities and counties, so other jurisdictions, both within North Carolina and across the U.S., to see what they were doing with boards and commissions related to accommodations and compensation. And then we conducted an internal organizational scan. So we wanted to really get a feel for what the city of Asheville is already doing with boards and commissions, accommodations, and compensation. Then we developed a list or a menu of recommendations for future consideration. Next slide, please. So just to give a little bit of context for this analysis and what we saw as the purpose for doing this research, we have a table presented on this slide of point-in-time demographic data for boards and commission members from December 2022. So the table indicates the race that members indicated on their application to be a board or commission member. And then we have the total number of members and then the percent that adds up to. So we had 19% African American or Black members in our boards and commissions. We had 69% white, 5% Hispanic or Latino. We did not have anyone indicate Native American or Indigenous. We did not have anyone indicate Asian American or Pacific Islander. 3% of members indicated or identified that they were multiracial, and then 5% of members did not respond to the or chose not to indicate their race. We wanted to note that some groups that have been historically excluded tend to be drawn to a few specific boards. These are the African American Heritage Commission, the Human Relations Commission of Asheville, and the Community Reparations Commission. So while we can see here that there's 19% African Americans, for example, on our boards and commissions, if we look at a table that's been adjusted for these three outlying boards that I've mentioned, next slide, please. We can see that the number of African Americans across boards and commissions that are not the African American Heritage Commission, Human Relations Commission, or Reparations Commission drops from 19% African Americans to 10% African Americans on our boards and commissions. So we want to see representation, diverse representation across all of our boards and commissions. Hence, we've done this research to look into accommodations and compensation, to assess barriers and hopefully increase or support diversity across all of our boards. Next slide, please. So the way we've done this, our methods, we used the Policy Equity Analysis Toolkit as a guide for our thinking. And this was based very heavily on the Government Alliance for Race and Equity, Racial Equity Toolkit, which Brenda mentioned earlier in her presentation. So we use that as a framework just to guide our thinking and help us ask important questions related to analysis. We also sent a survey to the North Carolina Clerk Listserv to learn a little more about what other jurisdictions in North Carolina are doing for boards and commissions accommodation and compensation. We did a little bit of outreach, so phone calls and emails, to other jurisdictions, both within North Carolina and across the country. Boards and commissions internal staff liaisons also responded to a survey that we sent out. So that's internal to the city of Asheville. Staff liaisons to our boards and commissions responded to a survey to indicate what they thought might be helpful or some needs that they had been hearing from their board members. We reviewed some literature on inclusive boards and commissions. Admittedly, there's not a lot out there, but we did find at least one helpful research article that we used in this. We reviewed responses from the Realignment Working Group's survey to former and existing boards and commission members, and we involved the Realignment Working Group in the early stages of drafting the findings and recommendations. Next slide, please. So these are the findings, and they're broken up. The first 1 through 5 are what are other jurisdictions doing, and then the last 3, 6 through 8, are what is happening in the city of Asheville. So what are other jurisdictions doing? First, we found that many other jurisdictions still allow for remote meetings. Very few offered hybrid modality. And of the ones that did offer hybrid modality, this was limited to their city council meetings. What I mean by hybrid modality, currently boards and commissions here at the city of Asheville can be in person fully or online fully. Hybrid modality means that there is an ability to participate both in person and also online. So there are not very many examples of this out there, and the ones that do exist are limited to city council meetings. Finding number 2, accommodations are considered on a case-by-case basis in most other jurisdictions. Some jurisdictions offer general services to all boards and commission members, for example, parking or transit passes to attend meetings. But requests for other accommodations tend to be considered on a case-by-case basis. For example, that might be working with a boards and commission member with a disability to make a plan to support them to participate in meetings. Finding number 3, most jurisdictions do not provide compensation for members. In some jurisdictions, their planning commission or their city council members receive stipends, but advisory boards did not, even in those jurisdictions that did provide stipends to council members or to their planning commission members. Finding number 4, there are very few models of compensation. A few that exist are Durham, North Carolina, which has an opt-in general stipend. So they will provide a stipend to members who opt into that option. And then Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which has an opt-in childcare and transportation assistance. So this is members saying that they would like some assistance to pay for childcare or to pay for transportation in order to attend meetings. Finding number 5, the efficacy of promoting public participation by compensating members is unknown. What I mean by that is if we were to provide compensation to boards and commission members, or if a jurisdiction were to do so, it is not known what the outcomes of doing so might be. We don't know if it would increase participation. We don't know if it does reduce barriers. The policy equity analysis team did not find any previous research on or evidence of the outcomes or efficacy of this kind of compensation for boards and commission members. So if the city of Asheville chooses to move forward with compensating our boards and commission members, it would be really important to develop a framework to measure and report on those outcomes. Next slide, please. Councilwoman Roney.
Should I wait until the end or ask a question about number 5 now?
I think go ahead and ask. It might be answered later, and if that's the case, I'll let you know.
So a program like the Durham stipend program for advisory board members that's been in place for at least a few years, is it not possible to reach out and find out what kind of success they might have had or what kind of data or metrics they're pulling to better understand that?
Yes, so we did reach out to Durham to inquire into that. Anecdotally, they said that they felt like it did increase participation, but they didn't have metrics to demonstrate it. So it was kind of just observations of the staff person that we talked to.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So what is happening in the city of Asheville? Finding number 6, the city of Asheville is comparable to most jurisdictions in North Carolina, and we may even offer slightly more than some jurisdictions do. Asheville currently offers transit passes to all appointed board members. We have an annual volunteer appreciation event. We have a new member orientation with food provided, and we have remote or in-person meeting formats. Hybrid meetings are currently under exploration. Many of the jurisdictions explored in North Carolina offered similar accommodations to their boards and commissions, with some jurisdictions not providing all of these. And importantly, the city of Asheville offers staff liaisons to support our boards and commissions, which is not something that every jurisdiction does. Finding number 7, we need to identify what specific needs should be addressed in a boards and commissions accommodations and compensation program. There's not a lot of data on the precise levels or types of need for compensation or assistance within the Asheville community, or how much the need is being met by our current system. There's also minimal data on how these needs are concentrated in different geographic areas of Asheville or among different groups in Asheville. Finding number 8, there is a potential need to have a broader conversation about the structure of advisory boards. We currently don't have a standardized process for boards and commissions accommodations with a decentralized approach. So the realignment working group developed a survey to existing and former board members as part of their own research into effective boards and commissions. And in that survey results, there were calls not just for pay, but for board restructuring, better scheduling, greater direction, greater staff and council engagement, and more power or influence for boards and commission members. It's possible that these issues are all related to limitations of the current structure of advisory boards and might be resolved or at least improved with changes to that structure. Next slide, please. So taking a look at these findings, the policy equity analysis team then drafted a menu of potential options that can be considered to implement in order to support a diverse representation on our boards and commissions. We use the term menu because we want to see the variety of what's possible, while also understanding that it may not be feasible or desirable to do everything listed. Instead, strategies can be picked from the menu that best fit, considering what we're trying to accomplish within staff capacity and budget. The menu includes examples, opportunities, challenges, estimated costs, and considerations for staff capacity. We've broken down the strategies into a few buckets, if you will, which you see bullet pointed here, and I'll go over them. One of them being stipends, and this might be universal stipends, meaning everyone gets one, or qualified stipends, which might be based on some criteria like income or to cover specific expenses like childcare or transportation needs. Another option is to consider providing childcare on site. In-person meeting accommodations might be providing parking vouchers or snacks to keep energy up in the meetings. And city-provided accommodations might be things like boards and commission member events, an awards program, or perhaps loan of equipment such as laptops during their service as a board member. Professional development is another bucket of potential options. Within that, there might be professionally facilitated planning retreats or training and conference opportunities for boards and commission members. And then there's also considering changes to the structure of boards and commissions, like encouraging working groups to meet between formal meetings, having formal meeting time for advisory boards be every other month rather than every month, with, of course, the ability to set additional meetings as needed, and perhaps even having joint meetings with 2 or more commissions when there are informational presentations that multiple boards might benefit from. So just thinking about ways to change the structure of boards and commissions as it currently is to make it more accessible or convenient to participate in. Another option or bucket of options to consider is increasing community engagement. So having more community engagement through focus groups or campaigns could help staff learn more about the needs related to accommodations and compensation, and to advertise and ask people who have previously not served on boards and commissions if they would consider it. Finally, accessibility enhancements to continue building on the great work that's already happening in the city to improve accessibility of our public meetings, such as CAPE's language accessibility services, and the work that they're doing to get us towards hybrid public meetings. Next slide, please. So we've conducted this analysis, and now we need to develop recommendations for practical application. Any discussion that takes place today with the committee will help inform recommendations, which we hope to bring back to you with some additional information in late spring of 2024. Next slide, please. And just to recap key takeaways from this presentation, the Policy Equity Analysis team took on the task of exploring accommodations and compensation for boards and commissions in order to promote equity and have diverse representation among our members. Asheville's accommodations are comparable to most other jurisdictions. Very little benchmarking data exists for compensation, which is an opportunity for Asheville to be among the first to measure if it's implemented. Community outreach could provide a more complete understanding of our community's needs, and some findings point to a need to consider structural changes to improve equity and accessibility in boards and commissions. I would be happy to take your questions.
Committee, do you have any questions?
Hey, this is Sage. Sorry, I went off camera because I was trying to cook the food. I think this is great. A lot of information, lots of options in there. I wanted to point out that something I experienced recently, and I think Kim was in that meeting too. We had a joint meeting, and I thought it was really productive. And that's the first time I've heard that we might consider having more intentional joint meetings when the content overlaps. And I want to encourage that because I think it helps reduce some of the confusion between what's happening in some sections of the city and not. And I think it's just really helpful. So I wanted to kind of support that. But in general, I'm excited just to see us continuing to move forward on this and figure out how we're going to improve our boards and commissions and participation. I mean, there's a lot of things. I didn't realize that Chapel Hill and Durham were the only other two that had this hybrid kind of model. Fascinating. I didn't think anybody was finding a way to do that in the state, that there was some legality issue.
Well,
go ahead.
Sorry, our other local model is our French Broad NPO has hybrid meetings. And because of that, before the hybrid meeting option, they had to have a special metric for quorum because they could never get a quorum in person. And so since the pandemic and having the hybrid option, we have the highest number of participation and we haven't had quorum issues. So we have a local body that oversees budget plans and policies for our state maintained roads and is having hybrid meetings.
Thanks. Great info, y'all.
I think the board term becomes very intimidated for people who have work responsibilities, family responsibilities, or other priorities. So if we were looking to increase participation, maybe we can have project-based involvement or special interest where people can kind of plug and play, so to speak. Because I think, making a long-term commitment can be compromising to people's schedules and economically. But it's interesting that when we're having this conversation, I feel that we make the assumption that we don't have a diverse participation or participation from people of color because they can't afford to. I think that is a poor assumption. I think most people, the biggest thing that they look at when not participating in this type of engagement is that they don't really have the time or it's not a priority. But if we create opportunities for them to be involved and it's kind of tailored to or customized to their time availability, we probably get more participation.
Thank you.
This is Kim. Another thing that I'm keeping in mind is the HIAC member, Elvia Diaz, has brought forward multiple times the concern that if everyone's able to be around the table because their job wants them to be there at that table, they are being compensated. So if we don't find a way to compensate people for bringing their professional and lived experience to the table, we're just missing having a whole conversation because we're missing the resources at the table that folks can bring that maybe aren't compensated to be there while others are in a way.
Thank you.
Is that
sorry, go ahead.
Is that possibly a metric we want to review and mark on these applications? I mean, I don't know. I'm thinking of the boards I'm on or have been on in the past, and I don't know that very many are paid to be there by their own other jobs. But curious thought.
So I think about like in this situation where I'm imagining the conversation around salaried employees of organizations that are showing up or people who are on a salary and then they're like on their lunch break or on their breakfast break or after dinner. It's like they're doing the work that they have done professionally, but it's certainly off the clock, right? So that was a really a catching point of like, oh wait, so-and-so's here from this organization, so-and-so's here from this organization, they're informing the conversation. But if we want people with lived experience to show up, the resources aren't there. So I guess thank you for bringing forward this analysis. I was surprised that we don't see a recommendation moving forward, but I know when we had the meeting at boards and commissions with the working group that's been looking at the boards and commissions, there was a request to bring that to the full council. And I think that would be so informative to see what our community is finding from our previous board and commission members about what their experience has been. What were the barriers? What made it hard to show up and be present and to inform our decisions? And maybe at that point we could see a different recommendation move forward to get behind this and have some meaningful response.
All right, thank you. I think that's it for us today. Maybe take a look at.
I did see Rachel Wood's hand up. I don't know if you still have something you might want to say, Rachel.
Councilmember Smith, if it's okay, I just wanted to quickly thank Elena for the work that she has done, not only on this project, but also the service that she's provided to this city. Definitely appreciate the work that Sarah Gross and the Policy Equity Analysis team has put into this. And Councilmember Roney, to your point, this is an organizational work plan project, and our goal is to bring forward formal recommendations to you. Attached to today's materials is the analysis that's taken place to date, but this is by no means a completed project. Next step would be working towards what those recommendations are. And to some of the points that Elena raised in her presentation, we want to work with current advisory board members to get their feedback on what would be most workable and what would be most beneficial to reducing barriers to participation. Lastly, although this is not her last committee meeting, I want to note the amount of work that went into the Department of Equity and Inclusion's presentations today, and thank Brenda Mills for her continued service to the city, but also thank her for not coasting as she heads into retirement. She continues to do some really heavy lifting for our organization, as is evidenced by the work that she put forward today to this committee. So really appreciate both Elena and Brenda. I'm excited to say we have at least one more committee meeting with Brenda, but really appreciate the work of the Department of Equity and Inclusion.
Best of luck to you, Elena.
Yeah, good luck, Elena. Brenda?
I just wanted to say, Elena is amazing. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Elena's amazing. She, I don't know if you know, Elena's getting her PhD, and she is going to school full time. She leaves for New Zealand on the 2nd of December. So she'll be there 2 weeks presenting at both conferences the first 2 weeks, and then she has decided to stay and see New Zealand. So we're all living vicariously through her. Her work has been tremendous in this department, and never doubted for a minute that she would do a good job. I'm glad she hung in there with me, and we'll miss her terribly. She, the affectionately known the P team, the Policy Equity Analysis team, the clerk's office, have just done a yeoman's job on all of these projects. And we just thank you so much for really listening to our presentations, but also giving really thoughtful feedback. So we appreciate that.
Thank you both for your time and your service. I think that is it for our meeting. Do we have anybody in the speaker queue?
One moment, let me check. No, we do not.
All right, that's our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.